I have good news and bad news about Saskatoon's farm and acreage life, where the northern lights are commonplace and so is a good potluck. Around here, we wave to everyone, so hello and welcome. If you're looking to buy or sell an acreage or farmland, call, text, or email. My information's in the description below. Now, the good news is that the average price for acreages around Saskatoon was only $650,725. Now, acreage living could mean a lot of things to different people. Let's break it down. First on the list, we have equestrian acreages. Now, these properties are specifically set up for horse lovers. They will commonly have stables and corrals, and it could be in a subdivision community, or it could be at a separate one-off parcel where it was broken off of a bigger quarter section at one time. Next on the list is organic farms. Now, it is typically separate from other traditional grain farms, and when you go to the grocery store and you see produce that was grown without chemicals, yes, there is a specific market for that. Yes, it is a little bit harder to grow as many bushels per acre on an organic farm, but the prices are usually higher for this type of crop as well. Mixed use farms. Now, you don't see as many of these now, but these are typically smaller or medium-sized farms where they still do a lot of livestock within their existing operation, and they do that as a way to save on costs. They do that as a way to bring in additional income, and because the bigger farms seem to be taking over more and more land these days, and there's less and less of the family that continue to stay on the farm, you don't see them as much. But anybody that's looking to get into farm and they're starting from scratch, this is often the way that they will live as they continue to grow their operations. Recreational properties. You will see these scattered all across the province of Saskatchewan. We have a ton of really great lake properties in our province, and they are substantially affordable if you compare them to any other place in Canada. And they're not always super commercial. You will see lakes in our province that are a reasonable commute to Saskatoon that are actually still quite private. Luxury acreages. Now, these are typically subdivision style communities just outside of the city of Saskatoon, where they've been broken into either 1 acre, 3 acre, or 5 acre parcels, and people build great big houses on these, and there are very similar to city-like services accessible to these properties. And because it's such a close commute to Saskatoon, people often find that they've got the wide open space of an acreage and the convenience of city life to have a really great balance in between. Old farmhouse style acreage sites. Now, this could simply be a really nice shelter belt of trees with services to the property and a house that really doesn't have a lot of value in it, which in my opinion is one of the best build sites that you could possibly find, because if you start an acreage on a bald piece of prairie land, you don't have any shelter, you don't have any privacy, where these yard sites are set up specifically where they already have oftentimes gas, power, and water all set up to them, and shelter. Sometimes they even have outbuildings come with them. And on the flip side as well, it might have a beautiful house that comes with it, and it might have been sectioned off from a quarter of land that is no longer still attached to the property, because at one time the farmer had retired and cut it off from the actual farmable acres. And these can be really nice living arrangements. Grain farms. In Saskatchewan, we have one of the best opportunities for farmers that are looking to accumulate land and increase their farming operations. I've said that if you look at farmers and you look at acres of land in Saskatchewan, I think per capita we have a better opportunity than almost anywhere else in the world. However, you will notice that we only have one growing season, and because of that and because of our winters, getting the crop off the ground in the perfect time without having the weather or some other unforeseen event interfere with your crop production can be a challenge. But the amount of acres that farmers will sometimes work does seem to make up for that, and then some, on a good year, of course. Hobby farms. Now, this could sometimes be considered the same as your jack of all trades, but the difference here is that you have your farming operations, but because it's such a smaller farm, there isn't enough income from the farm to create a sustainable living from that. So you'll often see hobby farmers who are doing multiple other jobs in order to make sure that they have a sustainable income. Livestock operations. You will see a lot of big farms in Saskatchewan with cattle, pigs, goats, and sheep. You'll see some big hog farms, dairy farms, and everything in between. We even have bison here in Saskatchewan. Now here's a short list of acreage subdivision communities close to the city of Saskatoon. First on the list is Edgemont Park Estates. Now this is actually a newer development which is just south of town, just south of one of our more popular luxury subdivisions of Saskatoon, the Willows, and you'll find it just south of the Willows. Now this acreage community development was under development for quite a number of years, slowly getting picked up one lot at a time, and then when COVID hit, you saw this development sold out in record time. Matter of fact, I believe the developer has purchased an additional lot nearby where they're going to do an additional phase of development in Edgemont, and it's probably the newest community on the list today. Greenbrier Estates. Now this is the echelon, so to speak, of acreage communities and really luxury communities in general around Saskatoon. Now it is just south of town, right on the outskirts, just south of Rosewood neighborhood, and you will see properties in this neighborhood probably starting somewhere around 1.2, 1.3, up to sky's the limit, really. You've seen people build properties of over $10 million in this acreage development. And of course, wrapped around Greenbrier Estates is Greenbrier Golf and Country Club. Casa Rio Estates. Now this is quite a bit further south of Saskatoon. It's still a very reasonable commute. You will find it just south of Edgemont Estates, and you do have bigger lots in this acreage community, and it is set up where you can have horses on the property, which is really quite nice. Now, Greenbrier was developed only a handful of years ago. Edgemont is newer. Casa Rio is a little bit of an older development. It was about late 90s, early 2000s when it was put in, which creates a really unique opportunity to have an established neighborhood, acreage neighborhood with trees, and still having enough land on the property where you've got a nice yard and a nice area where you can set up a place with your horses. Grasswood Estates. Now this is sort of right south of town from Stonebridge down to Grasswood Esso, if you see where that is. And I'll be honest, it's a little bit of a hodgepodge in this particular development, if you can call it that, just because going back to the 70s, even before that, there's different sections of land that have sort of been cut up this way or that way. But if you can find an acreage that has some good privacy in this particular area, it can be some of, if not the nicest and most prime acreage real estate close to Saskatoon, because it is so rare to find a really nice property or a really nice build site or a really nice opportunity for you to take the shell of a property and turn it into something great. And you still do see people who are trying to get additional sections subdivided and sectioned off so they can build another property right next to it. So these are rare, unique gems that are sort of tucked into nook and cranny pockets just south of Saskatoon, right on the outskirts. Riverside Estates is also south of town, and you will find this is probably the oldest subdivision community on the list, and you will see some of Saskatoon's most premium properties in this neighborhood. You've seen properties 5 million up to 10 million in this neighborhood, and it is, I think, built around the 1980s. So a lot of these properties do need substantial renovations, but if you can find one that is updated, or if you're willing to invest in the renovations required to make this your next home, you will see that a lot of these properties are again surrounded by trees, but a lot of them also have a beautiful river view that is unmatched by anything else on this list here today. Cathedral Bluffs. Now this is also riverfront property, but it is north of town. So you've noticed a little bit of a trend where all of the rest of these subdivision communities are south of town. And I don't know exactly why, but the trend seemed to go south as far as subdivision acreage communities, and everybody sort of followed. And if you want to be in where the people are buying properties, you want to have the resale where the buyers are looking, essentially. And also I think part of that is that the north of Saskatoon is largely industrial, and then you've got that gap between the north of Saskatoon and then Warman and Martinsville, and there's a lot of commercial and industrial property around those areas. However, what Cathedral Bluffs has been able to do is find a really unique section of property right on the river, right north of what we call the north end of Saskatoon, which is actually quite a desirable area of town, specifically because it's a close and easy commute to the industrial if you work in that area or the commercial areas, but it's also close to walking trails and paths, etc., right on the river. And so Cathedral Bluffs seems to have sort of piggybacked on that, and it's a really nice, unique, niche community where you can find $1 million plus properties almost right in the city of Saskatoon. Within a short drive of Saskatoon, there are a handful of very notable municipalities that I'll break down for you today. And first on the list is, of course, Cormorant Park, which is the rural municipality, RM, that is surrounding Saskatoon in general. And a lot of the subdivision communities that I've just mentioned, you will find in the RM of Cormorant Park. Now, this RM specifically has made it a little bit more difficult for a lot of different developers to come up with new property ideas, etc., because it's so close to Saskatoon, and how things unfold in terms of development do make a large play as to how we can continue the urban sprawl of our city in general. So there's always a lot of back and forth negotiations that happen with what we could or should do with this section or area of land. And there's also all kinds of government specific infrastructure that need to take place when it's so close to the city of Saskatoon. So this is seemingly somewhat of a good thing and also a bad thing. You do hear a lot of developers complaining about the RM of Cormorant Park. The RM of Blucher, you will find this area just southeast of Saskatoon, and it is well known for its fertile farmland and its potash reserves. So you have in this RM the town of Clavet, the town of Bradwell, and the town of Allen, which is right nearby the Nutrien Allen potash mine. The RM of Aberdeen, which encompasses the town of Aberdeen and is just northeast of Saskatoon. And you will also notice here that there is quite a number of acreage style subdivision communities, which are also very, very nice and a close commute to Saskatoon. And it is known for its rolling hills and picturesque landscape, and it is on the way to Waka Lake, which is another attraction close to Saskatoon. The RM of Vanscoy, which is straight west of town, which also has agriculture as a mainstay. But what you will notice as well is the strong potash reserves in Vanscoy, where you can find the Nutrien Vanscoy potash mine, as well as the towns of Vanscoy, Delisle, and Asquith. You'll also find in this RM Pike Lake, which is another attraction close to Saskatoon. The RM of Rostern, which is straight north of Saskatoon and is more or less halfway to Prince Albert, which is essentially the gateway to the north. Now, the town of Rostern itself is very self-sustaining, but it does have its own hospital. It is not necessarily a commuter town to Saskatoon, but the RM itself is also very well known for the agriculture in the area. The RM of Laird. Now, this will be found in slightly northwest of Saskatoon, and in this RM, you will see the towns of Hepburn, Waldheim, and Laird, which is what the RM is named after, although it's really not much of a town. It's really a small hamlet almost. But Laird as well is very well known for its agricultural developments, but you are also now starting to see additional subdivision community acreages come up in the area, and I think that there is a lot of untapped potential in this RM. It's not a largely populated RM, unlike some of the other ones we've mentioned. The RM of Dundurn, in addition to agriculture, what you will also find is the town of Dundurn, and you will also see our military base just outside of Saskatoon found in this RM. And of course, you will find one of the nicer lakes close to Saskatoon is Blackstrap, where there is a ton of secondary properties or permanent full-time residences all along the lake of Blackstrap, which is again a very short commute to Saskatoon and one of the bigger attractions right close to town. If you live on an acreage in Saskatchewan, you will know that the traffic report is essentially 2 tractors and a flock of geese. That's rush hour about sorted, and that's the way we like it. Living in nature is great, yes, until a family of raccoons moves into your attic. If you like coyotes, ravens, moose, and porcupines, then you're in the right place. Your internet connection is about as stable as the gas prices. Well water and septic systems. Good, bad, or ugly? You tell me. And don't even get me started on the school bus adventures on the grid roads. You'll develop a personal relationship with your snow shovel, a little bit of a love-hate relationship. You love to hate it, especially when your driveway is half a mile long. Love thy neighbor. This is specifically for farmers in general. Yes, love thy neighbor as long as they are at least several football fields away and they aren't spraying their crops on the wrong windy day in my direction, because when they do, I get very angry and I will never forget. I'm only half kidding, but seriously. And why drive a car when you can drive a snowmobile? Whether you're getting groceries, visiting friends, or escaping your in-laws, it's all done at 50 kilometers an hour in pristine snow conditions. Now, you might have wanted a garden, but you now have the Amazon rainforest in your own backyard. But don't worry, if there's ever a shortage on onions, potatoes, sunflowers, or corn, we got you covered. And of course, emergency services are a little bit more than a block away, unfortunately, if you live in the Saskatchewan Prairie. Seriously though, since the pandemic, we have noticed a bit of an uptick in the trend to move towards acreage life because of the open feel and the community and the isolation and the ability to work from home now these days. And what's also nice about an acreage lot, if you're looking to build a house, is that in the city, a lot of times the lots are smaller, so you have to build a 2-story to get the house you want, where on an acreage, you can build the biggest, nicest bungalow you can think of. If you can dream it up and you can afford it, you have more than enough room to build exactly what you want. And you can find a lot of properties and lots that have ability to put that walkout basement that you've always wanted. Historically though, acreages have been a little bit touch and go when it comes to the market in general. And as much as it is more now, the trend than it has been before in the past, it is more expensive on average than building in Saskatoon. As I looked at everything sold within 50 kilometers of Saskatoon, that was where I found that average price of around $650,000. But what you'll notice is there isn't a whole lot of affordable properties. If you're looking for properties like that, you'll have to go to the smaller towns surrounding Saskatoon, those commuter towns. But for acreages in general, if you want the additional space, you do pay for it. And with interest rates on the rise, that has made it a little bit more difficult for acreage properties these days. But again, if you have one of those unique rural farm property style acreages, those can be a really affordable place to start if you're looking at acreages. And there are opportunities if you look hard enough for them, or you find a good realtor like myself. If you're looking for help on acreages or farms, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Send me an email, give me a call, and I'd be more than happy to help. Thanks for today, and we'll see you on this video next.